Hello and welcome to the Philippines. Come along with me while I take a trip over on Mactan Island. This is a jeepney ride. We're going from down near the two bridges that go across over to Cebu City, Mandaue City, and we are going over towards a resort called Movenpick. A nice resort there. They've also got condominiums for rent and for sale. And anyway, we get to take a little bit of look around Mactan Island. When I first came here in 2015, I seriously considered Mactan Island as I looked at different properties. They seem to be lower priced on Mactan Island, houses and apartments, houses for rent than what I could find in the Cebu City area. I know of several expats that live over there. Several of them are married. A couple of them have houses, have bought houses. And anyway, they are still on GCQ, which is the more lenient quarantine type situation. Many of the stores are open. There's more traffic, more transportation, jeepneys, buses. Cebu City has gone back under a more strict ECQ, enhanced community quarantine. But anyway, I was over there just prior to, this trip was just prior to Cebu City being downgraded back to ECQ. And Mactan Island has a lot of potential, I think. There's along the east coast there you have many resorts, anything from the lower end resorts that cost maybe $1 for day use, and you can rent rooms out for relatively inexpensive, on up to 5-star resorts like Movenpick and many others out there with nice beaches. And my understanding is that most of the white sand they've hauled in from someplace else. Not sure where, but they maintain those beaches, and you also have all sorts of water sports that they offer. You can buy a day pass that allows you. Oftentimes, allows you one meal, or they allow a certain portion of that day pass for food. For consumption, food and drink, and lots of water sports that you can buy into too. You can get a package deal, or you can just buy some time on jet skis, or flying above the water, or banana boat, whatever. You have a few other things going on too. You've got a fourth bridge going in on the south side, or third bridge going in on the south side. Will probably open in 2020, late 2021, maybe 22. You've got a fourth bridge that's planned on the north end of Mactan going over to Cebu Island. You've got a huge reclamation project that is planned down near the third bridge. You've got Mactan Newtown that I'll probably put up a video about that here in the next couple of days. I've got that is a multi-use commercial, retail, and residential buildings, transforming a certain part of Mactan Island. Access to the beaches there as well. Number of new malls being planned over there, so it is a lot of things going on after this economic shutdown starts straightening out. Anyway, a little bit of news that some of you might be interested in. I've read in the last couple of days. The Cruise Lines International Association, for instance, announced Friday ships will not be sailing from U.S. ports until at least September 15th. I have a few questions for many of you. Have you changed because of this crisis, that manufactured or not, that we're in? Have you changed your life going forward? Have you done anything differently in planning your future? Little things like here, normally I keep 2 5-gallon jugs of water, for instance. And after a couple weeks of being shut down, I started evaluating the risks, and I decided, you know what? You get these bottled waters from just about every street, every corner has a water purification place. What if these guys start getting viruses and shutting down their operations so that there is a more difficulty to get water? That happened during one of our drought, actually. There were drought in many parts of the city. People couldn't get water. And many of the little neighborhood water places, people were coming in from other areas and trying to fill their water jugs. So there were waiting times. And anyway, I bought 4 extra 5-gallon, another 20 gallons of water to keep on hand. So when I always had 4 or 5 full ones, because you need to bring 2 down to get them refilled. I generally keep my cupboards fairly well stocked, but I bought a little extra stuff. I bought some stuff that would have longer shelf lives. And I made sure I knew where when I first came here 5 years ago, I had brought some water purification tablets, and I made certain that I knew where that was. And I know that you can use various different methods to clean water too. If it came to that point, I would rather be prepared. Anyway, what have you guys done? You guys and girls, what have you done? Prepared? Have you put food away? Purchased more food? Have you made more other emergency preparations? Would be interesting to hear about that in the comment section. Much of the Philippines has entered what they call the wet season. About June 12th, they said it started, and we're getting soon we will be getting mostly southwestern winds from the southwest. But we've almost every day we've had cloudy skies much of the day. We've had a little bit of rain almost every day, and here in Cebu it often rains for 20 to 40 minutes and then it's done. Might sprinkle a couple times or rain a little more a little later in the day. But it very rarely, although it did about a week ago, it rained all day. Not hard most of the time, but it rained most of the day, off and on. And definitely need it. There was a drought here in 2015 when I came, and there was a drought last year, 2019. Many of the wells that are in use are low. There's still a few areas of town that don't get regular water because the wells are too low. They have to have it brought in from other places. Much of the economy here in the Philippines and around the rest of the world has been shut down since about middle of March, and I have been fairly optimistic that the politicians, the medical people, would try to force things open much sooner than what's happening. And I think there's many people there's very little talk about the cost of the shutdown, the economic cost, the personal cost, the deaths that are happening because of the shutdown. We do know that there's certain groups of people that are more susceptible to the virus than others. Primarily people with what they call comorbidities. If you're ill, if you have high blood pressure, diabetes, metabolic issues, a number of other issues, you're more prone to have serious side effects. We do know that in many countries, the vast majority, I think in Cebu province, it's like 90% or more of the cases that test positive are mild or even asymptomatic, no symptoms. And we know that age is a factor. In fact, many of the countries, most of the deaths have happened in nursing homes. I think the average death, like in Boston, was about 81 years old. I think in New York, which is had such a terrible number of cases there. They shipped off anybody testing positive that was older. They shipped them into nursing homes. The nursing homes were not allowed to say, no, we're not equipped to handle it, and many of them died there, spreading it throughout the system. They weren't set up for that, but they weren't given any choices. Happened in a number of states. Even in Sweden, many of the people were older, many of them in nursing homes. They have very large nursing homes in Sweden. So once it started spreading, they just didn't have a handle on it. One thing about the numbers in the USA, cases and deaths, I've heard a number of news shows talking about how terrible it is in the USA. I've heard a number of comments. I've talked to foreigners here in Cebu. Oh man, the U.S., you're just really having it bad there. And one thing to understand is that many doctors have complained early on that they received like a 7-page letter from the CDC, I believe, telling them that uh, when people die, they don't have to be. It's not important that they tested positive for the virus. Mark them down as dying from the virus. Uh, the politicians around the country and the CDC, they need to justify their decisions to shut down the economy. And how do you do that? Well, you make a bigger crisis out of a crisis. Don't let, somebody once said, don't let a crisis go to waste. Anyway, the numbers, if you do any research at all, you'll find that the U.S. numbers are probably greatly reflected. Another issue is that different states, different areas report deaths differently. I read an article, in fact, I think it was even before this virus was out, saying that one in three death certificates are reported wrongly. Different people, different states write the death certificate out, and sometimes it's just a guess. Sometimes it's just a without little evidence. They just mark something down, and that's good enough. So under the present circumstances, those that type of data is probably way off. Also, some areas, some countries, in fact, here in Cebu and probably much of the Philippines, they prioritized testing those ill, those who had symptoms, the older people. So they had a higher, as we go on here, they're having a higher rate because they're keying in on those types of individuals, it seems. One of the problems is that the cost of the shutdown often isn't, it's difficult to quantify. And many people they're scared enough they aren't even talking about it. Governor Garcia here in Cebu province, to her credit, she has brought it up many times. She said, our death rate is very low. We need the tourism. We need to open back up, and she has said that, but it's not happening pretty much. I really appreciate all the comments I get. There's many of you on different situations. Many of you saying you're just going to wait it out until sometime next year. There's others who have wives, families, girlfriends in the Philippines or other countries, and you're just waiting, desperately waiting to be able to go and come back and see them. There's some who you have money and you have time, so it's not important. If you come here, you get stuck here. That's not important. In fact, that's better than being where you're presently at, possibly. There's others who have said, "Man, I'm glad I'm stuck in the U.S. or U.K. or wherever, Australia, New Zealand." And we all have different situations. We all have different situations, different budgets, and one thing that will be happening, I think prices have already started coming down, so the cost of living will go down. Part of that will be up to your negotiating ability, and being able to walk away from certain properties that you think are rated a little bit too high. Anyway, this is we're getting pretty close to Movenpick. There'll be some buildings coming up. Movenpick isn't very far away from Mactan, Newtown on the eastern coast of the island of Mactan. I've done a video there at Movenpick. Went in, ate at the restaurant maybe 3 years ago or so, and very nice resort. Those buildings right ahead, that is Movenpick, and many areas. If you have time to visit, just go in and tell security that you're just going to use the restaurant, if that's the case, or if you want to use the day pass, and they will usually allow you in. Anyway, interesting to hear your comments, see what your views are, and thanks for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, safe travels to you. And there's the sign. There's the entrance to Movenpick, and there's a pier down here as well where people can get a ferry over to Bohol. In fact, here it is. I think that's Movenpick, just to the right there, back behind that wall. And entrance gate. They have island hopping down here. But at the present time, there are no boats going over. These go over to Hatafi on the north end of Bohol, I believe, and relatively inexpensive. My friend and her family I think they have some family, and they probably maybe some property over there, and they were wanting to take a trip over there and check that out, but they weren't able to get the proper travel passes and or even a boat ride for that matter over. So anyway, see you next time. Stay safe, stay healthy.